What's up, guys? Kevin here, and I know we've talked about tariffs in the past, but I want to talk about it again. I've seen a lot of misconceptions that the Trump tariffs that are being implemented are simply being used as a bargaining chip so that the US can get a leg up on other countries that have a lot of imported materials coming into the United States. However, I want to remind you that in the memos and the executive orders, it specifically states that that is not the case. And so in this video, I wanted to talk about it a little bit more. I'm going to share as many screenshots as possible so that you guys can see the information I'm referencing. And I will have links in the video description to the articles on the White House website so that you can read through it yourself. I just think this is one of those things where a lot of people see a headline and they start making assumptions and they try to think of how it should work or what they think will happen, when in reality, all of the information is available if we just read through it instead of just listening to the news and different people's opinions. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Also, just a quick shameless plug. I try not to talk about politics too much on here, but obviously the economy is a big talking point nowadays. So if you want to hear more about that, as well as chasing financial freedom, improving your credit, and managing your own business and things like that, definitely subscribe to the channel. I will be posting videos like this weekly to help you get your finances in order. But let's go ahead and jump into these tariffs. So the first thing I want to remind everybody is that these tariffs are not new. This is actually re-implementing an old policy that Trump put in place back in 2018. So if you see proclamations 9704 as well as 9705, they already previously put tariffs on aluminum and steel coming from other countries. However, there was a big asterisk on this proclamation because you were able to revert the tariffs based on agreements with the secretaries. So basically, countries could have conversations with the secretary to determine if they could come to an agreement on a way to manage their import better. And when they did that, there was an opportunity to reduce or eliminate the tariffs. Now, one thing I am still fuzzy on is what those agreements looked like. It's really hard to say, but supposedly, the secretary said, hey, we're importing too much of your stuff and it's negatively impacting our country. And then the other countries would say something like, my bad. And then they just agreed to turn the tariffs off. So whatever actually happened, pretty much all of the countries that were included in the original proclamations got put on an exemption list through the remainder of Trump's term, as well as during Biden's term. So now the tariffs are all but eliminated. So what Trump is doing now is he's looking at the results of that, and he determined, surprise, surprise, you reduce the tariffs and fees that it costs to import a product, and the import rates went up. Basically, we saw an increase in imported products from all the countries that were under the exemptions. And so Trump determined that allowing those exemptions was not a net gain for the US economy and actually made things worse than they were before. So this new policy reinstates the old policy with a couple amendments. A big one is, of course, that he's increasing the tariffs. So instead of certain products being only tariffed at 10%, it seems like basically everything will see a 25% tariff now. And also he has removed the secretary's ability to make an agreement with countries to reduce or eliminate the tariffs. Again, I don't know what that agreement would even look like. So it does kind of make sense that that isn't something that should happen easily, but it seems like the only person that can revert it now is the president himself. Now, this is one big reason why I don't see this just being a bargaining chip, because if you want the ability to revert tariffs, you should make it as easy as possible. And everything that they're doing to try to make processes more efficient, it seems like that would be the case. But now that he's going to basically own all of the decisions, and he's already put into the memo that reverting the tariffs in the past made things worse, it seems like that wouldn't be a good decision to make again moving forward. Now, on top of that, he's also adding additional taxes and additional things that can be tariffed. So for example, if you have a product that comes in as raw material, raw aluminum or raw steel, it obviously gets tariffed because of the code that it falls under when it's imported. But now we're also going to see taxes on products that just have some material, some aluminum or steel that come from other countries. So for example, if you have wheels or computer chips or anything that's both plastic and metal, but some of that steel or aluminum in the product came from China, then you can still get tariffed on the portion of that product that is from an imported raw material. So that's something that's new. They're basically making sure that all the classifications encompass any material that's coming in that's using material that's imported from another country. It's also eliminating loopholes. So maybe a company in China was fabricating raw material and they would ship it to another country that wasn't being tariffed by the United States. So basically they would add in a middleman, so when it came into the US, it wouldn't get taxed. So they're going to evaluate the ultimate originator of that material wherever it started, and that's what's going to determine if it's being tariffed or not. So that should eliminate any opportunities to go around the rules, and will make sure that any imported material that started out in a country under this tariff policy is going to see these extra 25% taxes. So again, if you're using this as a bargaining chip, I don't think that you're going to increase and add more and more taxes on top of what's already in place. If we said that it helped things before, but removing it made things worse, you're basically putting this back in place so that it can't be changed again, because you see it as a net positive, and that's everything that the memos tell us. Now, a big discussion, of course, is the economy, because yes, it should help promote the use of more materials that are made and fabricated in the United States. But in the actual executive order, you also see that it's highlighting things like illegal aliens crossing the border, drug trafficking, smuggling, and things like that. And we are basically using these tariffs as a way to, quote unquote, punish these countries for not having enough control over what comes over our border. So Trump basically puts in these documents that they're using this as a way to tell these other countries they need to get more control over what is coming over our border, who they're letting cross our border, and get better control of it on their side so that we don't have to manage it all ourselves. Based on what you see on the White House website, this is just adding more taxes coming into us to compensate for everything that we have to manage on our side of the border. Now, even above and beyond that, he's highlighting that new tariffs are likely on the horizon. For example, he just asked the secretary to start looking at copper. So over the next couple months, they're going to evaluate what copper imports look like, and I'm anticipating that they're going to determine it's an issue. So we're going to see increased tariffs on copper. And the same thing for wood. So they're looking at lumber and timber imports to determine if we're importing too much wood. And if that is an issue, same thing. I anticipate that'll see a tariff. Even car parts, they highlight that specifically they're looking at imported cars as well as car parts, because that is hurting the American industry. We have American car companies here, and so we shouldn't be importing majority of our cars or the parts that we use to build our cars. And they saw that as a big issue. As low as 25% of the cars that we have in the United States are actually built and made with materials in the United States. So very, very low percentage, and something that they want to address. So looking at another opportunity to add more tariffs, they're checking off that box. So this is just getting stricter and stricter, and they're adding more and more layers to what these tariffs are going to look like in the future. And that's not how you leverage something if you just want to use it as a bargaining tool. You're adding more and more pressure to these countries without really a way for them to change things. But of course, everything can change. For example, they're trying to make some exemptions for materials that are primarily made in the United States. So for example, if we export steel and aluminum to a country that uses it to make a material, and then they sell it back or ship it back to the United States, that is now exempt from tariffs. So if we look at it and we can see the materials used for that product or the car part or whatever came from the United States, it's going to be good. But yeah, all of this goes to show that this is not just being used as a bargaining tool. Exactly as the executive order suggests, this is being designed to help improve the American economy. Based on what they're reviewing, they saw positive results when they turned the tariffs on, and they saw negative results when they turned the tariff off. So now that it's getting turned back on and getting turned up, they're expecting it to be even bigger and better. So just keep that in mind whenever you hear somebody say that this is just being used as a bargaining tool and don't make any rash decisions. That's not what any of the documentation would suggest. If you read what's actually being published and what's being shared, there's absolutely nothing suggesting that this is just a temporary thing to try to get a leg up. It actually specifically says that we won't do that because it didn't work in the past. So hopefully this clarifies things. Again, I'll have a link in the video description to all of the documents that I'm referencing in this video, so you can read it for yourself. They are very wordy, so hopefully this kind of summarizes it for you if that's what you're looking for. But that's all we had for today. So thank you guys for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.